Severance begins with a question. Who are you? Mark says this to Heli, who is passed out on a table, slowly waking up. Mark then asks Heli if she would like to take a survey. Heli just wants to know who is speaking, and Mark continues to try to begin the survey. All during this time, Heli's just searching for a way out. Heli gives up and agrees to the 5 questions. Who are you? Heli doesn't know. In which state or U.S. territory were you born? Heli doesn't know. Name any state or U.S. territory. Delaware. What is Mr. Egan's favorite breakfast? She says that question makes no sense. To the best of your memory, what is the eye color of your mother? She doesn't know. Mark opens the door and says that's a perfect score. Then we see Mark in his car crying. He composes himself, he gets ready for work, and he walks into the building. He walks all the way down to the severed access floor, changes into his work clothes, and puts on his work watch, his work shoes, and he leaves his cell phone in the locker and heads on down towards the elevator. He gets wand, hops in the elevator, goes down, and then all of a sudden we hear a sharp noise, and Mark makes a face, and then he exits the elevator with a new bounce. He starts walking down a hallway, and he feels a tissue in his pocket, the one he was crying into. He just tosses it right into the trash can. He walks down hallway after hallway until he gets to his work area, which is one open space with one bunch of desks together. Then we meet Dylan. He notices Petey isn't in yet. He says he better not be out. Irv comes in, also talks about Petey, wondering where he is. Then we're introduced to Mr. Milchek. He comes in, asks for a word with Mark. They go down more hallways, enter Miss Cobell's office as we meet her for the first time, and she says the board will be joining them remotely. Miss Cobell says Petey is no longer with the company. Mark gets promoted and gets offered a handshake. Mark and Irv are next seen in a room that is being used to conduct Helis Orientation. And now we are back into the intro scene, and we see things play out from their perspective. After the initial questions, Mark enters the room to continue the orientation. Heli asks, "Did you grow me as a food? That's why I have no memory." He says no, and he tells her name is Heli R. He explains that she's been hired on the severed floor of Lumen Industries. Heli freaks out, throws a stapler at Mark's head, and tries to escape. Mark calms her down, tells her his name, and said he has gone through the same thing. There's a rule that if someone tries to leave orientation and they ask 3 times, they're allowed to leave. She asked 3 times, then he takes her to a stairwell to leave, but he said he's not allowed to watch. She leaves and instantly returns right back into the office. She does this over and over again until she gives up, walks back to Mark, and says, "Am I dead? Why can't I leave?" He says, "You did leave, but you came back." Miss Cobell welcomes Heli and gives her a video to watch. The video is her, as we come to find out, her Audi. Her Audi is the version of Heli outside of work. We'll get into that in a second. But it's Heli. She explains what severance is, and that from now on, the work version of Heli will no longer be able to access the memories or life of the outside of work Heli. And the outside of work Heli won't know what's going on inside of work. Mark leaves for the day, and his Audi takes over. He walks to his car and finds a note on the windshield. It's a gift card for Pip's Bar and Grill and a letter that says he slipped and fell and sustained a minor blow to his head. He then proceeds to leave the parking lot and almost runs over Audi Heli. They don't recognize each other, of course, and she says, "Maybe keep your eyes on the icy road." He goes home. Next day, calls his neighbor, Miss Selvig, about the trash because she is using his spot for trash and it's becoming an issue. His sister then stops by to pick him up. He forgot there was a dinner that isn't really a dinner. They go back to her house, and her husband, Rickon, answers the door and brings Mark into their house for their not dinner party. We find out Mark used to be a teacher, and so was his late wife. Rickon then tells the party that Mark is severed. His sister jumps in and says it should be Mark's choice to tell people or not, and that Rickon should not have said anything. This spurs up a conversation of what severance is like and whether or not it's moral. Turns out it's a political conversation that is currently going on in this world, so Rickon moves the conversation on. Then when it's just Mark and his sister Devin, the sister says forgetting about her for 8 hours a day isn't the same as healing, talking about Mark's late wife, wondering if that's the reason that he got the procedure. Mark decides to stay over Devin's house. He can't sleep in the middle of the night, and all of a sudden he sees a man in a suit standing out back. He sees them for a few seconds, a car goes by, and then this mysterious figure vanishes. The next day, Mark goes to Pip's Bar and Grill to use his gift card that he got for getting hurt. Miss Selvig calls again to talk about the garbage situation, but then suddenly, the man from last night sits across the table from Mark and says, "Hang up." He then says, "Hi, kids, what's for dinner?" This is what Irving says every time he gets to work. The man says, "You won't understand that joke right now, but my name's Petey. I'm from work." Mark says, "That's not possible." Petey explains he had his severance procedure reversed, so he is unsevered now, and he can remember both parts of his life. He says that people are after him, specifically Grainer, and that nothing they do down there is what they say. And if something happens to Petey, he wants the things that he knows to stay known, and he prefers to be his friend. Mark says, "So we're friends?" Petey says, "I'm your best friend. You're my very good friend." He gives Mark a card and leaves. Mark opens the car in his car, and Petey explains if he doesn't want to know anything, he won't force it. But if he does, he gave him an address to go to, and it will give him the beginning of a very long answer. Mark then returns home, takes out his trash, and all of a sudden we hear the voice of his neighbor. Then we learn the neighbor, Mrs. Selvig, is actually Miss Cobell to end the first episode.
Big thanks to Dan from Scene Invaders for doing that recap. Go check out their channel and subscribe. If you don't see the next episode in the end screen, not to worry, it'll be up in a few days. Be nice in the comment section, and I have a Patreon, so go support the channel by buying a t-shirt or signing up for the Patreon.